I don't know why you trying to act.
Being in that neighborhood.
8 years later, they were in Hollywood, making their first feature film. It's called Menace to Society.
You ain't gotta be creeping.
Always watching our backs because, we didn't know what was going to happen.
At the age of 12, twin brothers Alan and Albert Hughes were given a video camera by their mother.
You're making a movie about gang life, and suddenly real gang members are watching your every move. Actors are scared for their lives. Rap superstars are throwing punches, and movie managers are pulling guns on directors. This isn't some Hollywood drama. This is what actually happened when they tried to film one of the most intense hood movies ever made. Welcome to the insane true story of what went down behind the scenes of Menace to Society, where the line between acting and real life completely disappeared. Back in the early 1990s, movies about gang life were huge. Everyone wanted to see the raw, real stories of what life was like in the streets. But nobody could have predicted the absolute chaos that would happen when two young directors decided to make their own gang movie. The Hughes brothers, Alan and Albert, weren't just making another film. They were about to step into a world where one wrong move could get someone seriously hurt, and where the cameras weren't the only thing shooting. Let me take you back to where this all began. The Hughes brothers weren't some fancy film school graduates who grew up in mansions. These guys started from the bottom, shooting music videos when they were just 19 years old. They worked with some of the biggest names in hip-hop, including Tupac and Too Short. They shot almost 30 music videos, learning their craft on the streets with real artists who lived the life they wanted to put on screen. But everything changed when they watched a movie called Goodfellas. That Martin Scorsese film about the mafia opened their eyes to something powerful. They realized that gang stories could be told in a way that showed the real human side, not just the violence that the news always talked about. They started looking at their own neighborhoods differently, seeing stories everywhere that deserved to be told. The brothers grew up in areas like Watts and Crenshaw in Los Angeles. These weren't just random neighborhoods. They had serious history. Watts was the site of massive riots back in 1965 when a young man named Marquette Fry was killed during a confrontation with police. The anger from that incident sparked one of the biggest uprisings of that time. Then in 1992, right around when they were making their movie, the Rodney King riots happened, bringing all that pain and frustration back to surface. Crenshaw was different, but equally intense. It was a place where black pride and liberation movements had deep roots. So when the Hughes brothers decided to set their movie in these neighborhoods, they knew they weren't just making entertainment. They were touching on real pain, real history, and real people who were still living these struggles every single day. After about 2 months of research and writing, they had their script ready. The story followed a young man named Kane and his best friend O-Dog as they got deeper and deeper into street life. It wasn't just about glorifying violence. It was about showing how kids get trapped in cycles they can't escape and how the system often fails them completely. When they started shopping their script around Hollywood, most people didn't get it. But then they met Darren Scott, a producer who actually took the time to read their work. The script hit him so hard that he knew this story had to be told. He took it to New Line Cinema, and when the executives there read it, some of them were moved to tears. This wasn't just another action movie. It was a real look at what was happening in America's inner cities. But here's where things started getting complicated. The Hughes brothers wanted their movie to feel absolutely real, so they decided to cast actual people from the streets, not just trained actors. They had their eye on Eazy-E from the rap group and NWA for the role of O-Dog, the most violent character in the film. Eazy-E wasn't just a rapper. He had real street credibility and connections that ran deep in the community. The Hughes brothers had actually worked with Eazy before, back when they were shooting music videos. They'd been to NWA video shoots and had developed a relationship with the group. Eazy had even given them his phone number and told them to stay in touch. So when they wrote the character of O-Dog, they wrote it specifically with Eazy in mind. They thought he would be perfect because he wouldn't need to act. He could just be himself. But Eazy came with complications. His manager was a man named Jerry Heller, and Jerry was known for being extremely controlling and demanding. When Jerry heard about the movie role, he started making all kinds of demands about changing the script. He wanted more control over the project, and he wanted Eazy-E's character to be portrayed differently. The Hughes brothers weren't having it. They had a vision for their film, and they weren't going to let anyone mess with it, not even for a big name like Eazy. So Eazy was out, but that created a new problem. They needed someone who could bring that same intensity and street credibility to the role. That's when they found Larenz Tate, a young actor who ended up being absolutely perfect for the part. Larenz brought everything they were looking for: the intensity, the believability, and the acting skills to make the character come alive. But Eazy wasn't the only casting drama they faced. They also wanted MC Run, another member of NWA, to play a character called Wax. But once again, Jerry Heller stepped in and blocked it. The Hughes brothers were starting to see a pattern. Jerry Heller seemed to be making it his business to interfere with their project at every turn. Then came the Tupac situation, and this is where things got really crazy. Tupac was originally cast as Sharif, a Muslim character in Kane's crew. But from the very first script reading, Tupac was not happy. He kept interrupting rehearsals to complain about a character. He felt like Sharif didn't have enough to do, that the role wasn't meaty enough for someone of his stature. The Hughes brothers tried to be patient with Tupac. They explained their vision for the character and asked him to trust the process. But Tupac wasn't buying it. He kept pushing back, getting more and more frustrated with each rehearsal. Finally, Alan Hughes pulled Tupac aside to have a private conversation about it. That's when things went completely off the rails. According to Alan Hughes, he asked Tupac why he was acting up, and Tupac took it as a personal insult. The conversation got heated, and Alan ended up calling Tupac out of his name. That was a mistake he would regret very quickly. Tupac didn't let disrespect slide, ever. So later, when the Hughes brothers were out near the film set, Tupac and his crew rolled up on them. Tupac wasn't playing around. He told both brothers to get out of their car because he was going to handle them personally. Alan Hughes got the worst of it. Tupac jumped him and beat him up pretty badly, while Albert managed to get away from the situation. But even with all this drama happening with the cast, the real danger was yet to come. The Hughes brothers made a decision that sounds crazy now. They decided to film their movie right in the middle of actual gang territory. They set up their cameras in the Grape Street Crips neighborhood, one of the most dangerous areas in Los Angeles at that time. This wasn't some movie studio lot made to look like the hood. This was a real deal, where real gangsters lived and operated. Some of the actors were genuinely scared to be there. They weren't used to this kind of environment, and they could feel the tension in the air every single day of filming. But the Hughes brothers were smart about it. They hired people from the actual neighborhood to work on the film. Some became security guards. Others got small acting roles. By bringing the community into the project, they created a protective bubble around their film crew. The local gangsters weren't going to mess with a project that was giving their people jobs and opportunities. Still, it was nerve-wracking for everyone involved. Cast and crew members had to constantly watch their backs. One wrong word, one wrong look, one mistake could spark something dangerous. They were walking a tightrope every single day, trying to make their movie while staying safe in an environment where violence could erupt at any moment. The tension wasn't just coming from the neighborhood, though. Remember Jerry Heller, Eazy-E's manager who had been causing problems with the casting? Well, his issues with the Hughes brothers were far from over. During one visit to Jerry's house, the brothers made the mistake of mentioning Suge Knight's name. If you don't know who Suge Knight is, he was the head of Death Row Records and one of the most feared men in the music industry. The moment they said Suge's name, Jerry Heller completely lost it. He pulled out a gun and pointed it directly at one of the brothers. This wasn't some movie prop. This was a real weapon, and Jerry was making it clear that certain topics were off limits. The Hughes brothers realized they had stumbled into something much bigger than their little movie. They were caught in the middle of a war between two of the most powerful record labels in hip-hop. To understand why Jerry Heller reacted so violently, you have to know what was happening in the music industry at that time. NWA, the group that made Eazy famous, was falling apart. It all started back in 1989 when Eazy brought Jerry Heller in to manage the group. At first, things seemed good. NWA was selling millions of records and becoming one of the biggest acts in music. But slowly, the other members of the group started noticing problems. Ice Cube was the first to speak up. He looked at the contracts Jerry Heller had given them and realized the money didn't add up. NWA was selling millions of albums, but the individual members weren't seeing the profits they deserved. Ice Cube tried to negotiate better deals, but Jerry Heller wasn't budging. So Ice Cube made the difficult decision to leave the group and go solo. Dr. Dre was the next to have problems. He had signed a contract that paid him only $20,000 per album, which seemed like good money at first. But when his album, The Chronic, sold over 3 million copies, Dre realized he was getting robbed. He was making the label millions of dollars, but he was still getting paid like a small-time artist. When Dre tried to renegotiate his contract, Eazy and Jerry Heller refused. That's when Suge Knight entered the picture. Suge was working as a bodyguard for a rapper called the DOC, and he started looking into how the music industry was treating artists. What he found made him angry. Talented black artists were being taken advantage of by their own labels. Suge convinced Dre that he deserved better, and he offered to help him get out of his contract with Eazy-E's label, Ruthless Records. But Eazy wasn't going to let his biggest star leave without a fight. That's when things got really ugly. According to multiple sources, Suge Knight set up a meeting with Eazy at a recording studio. Eazy thought he was just going to talk to Dre one-on-one, but when he showed up, Suge and several other men were waiting for him. They allegedly threatened Eazy and his family, and some say they even got physical with him. Whatever happened in that room, it was enough to make Eazy sign papers releasing Dre from his contract. But Suge wasn't done. He went after Jerry Heller next. According to people who were there, Suge's crew showed up at Jerry's house, spray-painted threatening messages, and made it clear that Jerry needed to stay out of their way. Jerry Heller was so scared that he started carrying guns everywhere he went. This is the environment the Hughes brothers found themselves in while trying to make their movie. They weren't just dealing with regular Hollywood drama. They were caught in the middle of a violent war between some of the most dangerous people in the music industry. But Eazy wasn't just some rapper caught up in industry politics. He had real connections to the streets, and those connections ran deeper than most people knew. Eazy had strong ties to the Mexican-American community in Los Angeles long before Latino rap became popular. He had a close friend named Crazy D who was actually a member of NWA, even though most people don't know about him. Eazy was so connected to the Latino community that he signed a Chicano rap group called Brownside to his record label. These weren't just rappers trying to sound tough. These were real gangsters who had lived the life they rapped about. And when the war between Eazy-E's label and Suge Knight's Death Row Records got serious, Brownside stepped up to protect Eazy. The leader of Brownside, a rapper named Tokayer, told Eazy that his crew was ready to handle any problems with Death Row. These weren't empty threats. Brownside had young soldiers, some only 15 and 16 years old, who were ready to go to prison to protect Eazy. Tokayer made it clear that if Eazy wanted anyone from Death Row taken care of, all he had to do was say the word. Eazy appreciated the loyalty, but he tried to keep things from escalating. He didn't want a full-scale war, even though he knew Suge Knight was trying to destroy his business and his reputation. But Brownside wasn't taking any chances. They started going everywhere with Eazy, to business meetings, to restaurants, to industry events. Eazy was never alone, and the message to Death Row was clear. If you want to get to him, you'll have to go through us first. The most famous incident happened at the Cheesecake Factory restaurant. Eazy was just trying to enjoy a meal when 7 or 8 men claiming to represent Death Row surrounded his table. They were trying to intimidate him, thinking they had caught him without protection. But what they didn't realize was that the restaurant was full of Eazy-E's people. Suddenly, what looked like a simple dinner turned into a tense standoff. The Death Row guys realized very quickly that they had made a mistake. They were now the ones who were outnumbered and surrounded. They backed down and left the restaurant as fast as they could, but Tokayer called after them with a message. If they ever felt like coming back, Brownside would be waiting. All of this drama was happening while the Hughes brothers were trying to film their movie. Every day brought new dangers and new complications. They were dealing with real gangsters, industry politics, violent rap stars, and the constant threat that someone might get seriously hurt. When the movie finally came out, the drama followed it to theaters. During one of the very first screenings, Gunshots rang out in the theater and continued into the parking lot. The police had to lock down the entire area and search everyone who was there. They found a loaded gun and about 15 shell casings. 3 men were arrested, and while they claimed they weren't affiliated with any gangs, nobody really believed that. The shooting wasn't directly related to the movie, but it showed how the violence that the film portrayed was still very real in the communities where it was being shown. The Hughes brothers had succeeded in making a movie that felt authentic, but that authenticity came with a price. Looking back now, it's amazing that Menace to Society ever got made at all. The Hughes brothers faced obstacles that would have stopped most filmmakers. They dealt with violent confrontations, industry politics, real gang members, and constant threats to their safety. But they never gave up on their vision of telling a story that showed the human side of people who are often dismissed as just criminals. The movie went on to become a classic, influencing countless other films and launching careers of several actors. But the real story, what happened behind the scenes, is just as dramatic as anything that ended up on screen. It's a reminder that sometimes the most powerful art comes from the most dangerous places, and that telling the truth can be more risky than anyone expects. The Hughes brothers proved that with enough determination and courage, you can create something meaningful even when everything seems to be working against you. They took huge risks to tell a story they believed in, and even though they faced violence, threats, and constant danger, they never compromised their vision. Their experience making Menace to Society shows us that real art often requires real sacrifice. It's not enough to just have talent or good ideas. Sometimes you have to be willing to put everything on the line for what you believe in. The Hughes brothers did exactly that, and the result was a movie that still resonates with audiences more than 30 years later. If this incredible story behind-the-scenes chaos and real-life drama blew your mind like it did mine, make sure you hit that like button to let me know. And if you want to see more wild stories about what really happened during the making of your favorite movies, don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell. Trust me, Hollywood has way more insane stories like this one, and I'll be bringing them to you. Share this video with anyone who loves movies or hip-hop history. They need to know just how real things got when cameras started rolling on one of the greatest films ever made.